The clock is started.
And I can remember we went up to see Alan Shepard go around. He was going around a few times and come back down. And we took the dirt road. It was called Jungle Trail. It was a county road.
There were 2 deep ruts that formed the road, and it was high in the middle. And you usually didn't meet any other traffic, but if you did, you timed it so that you could get out on a clearing in the palmettos at the same time that the other vehicle was coming, and you put the left front wheel into the right rut, and they would do the same, and you'd quickly just jostle each other and get back into the 2 ruts again. So it was, you know, sometimes you got stuck.
Everybody got stuck on that road that had taken the children up to see the spaceship go up, and he was already back down, and we were still stuck on the dirt road, Jungle Trail. So, you know, it was a paradox here. You know, we were going into space, but we still had dirt roads, major roads in our county. It was our A1A.
Since the day steamboats first traversed its waters, the Indian River Lagoon had changed very little. Seagrasses along the riverbed and mangroves along the shorelines provided plenty of habitat for the fisheries. And while activities around Cape Canaveral put America's space coast on the map, the waters around the Sebastian Inlet were set in timeless beauty.
The river shore was very pristine then. There was a lot of greenery, coconut palms, sable palms. You know, there was no Brazilian peppers back then. And it was wild, and nobody built right on the river shore.
You didn't see many houses. You saw no high-rise. All the bridges were wood. There was no causeways. There was no dredge holes. And there was no filling that's been done in the last 30 or 40 years.
In the 1960s, the lagoon's unspoiled shoreline faced a disturbing threat. The state of Florida was selling the surrounding wetlands and islands for development. By buying the rights to the bottomlands of the lagoon, developers could dredge and fill along the river to build up waterfront property. These methods, however, threatened the very existence of the nation's first sanctioned wildlife refuge, Pelican Island. In 1881, a German immigrant named Paul Kregel arrived in Sebastian. From his homestead, he could look out over a 5-acre mangrove island in the Indian River Lagoon, where thousands of brown pelicans and other water birds would roost and nest. But when bird feathers became highly prized in the fashion industry, Kregel witnessed the slaughter of countless herons, egrets, spoonbills, and pelicans for their plumage. Taking an interest in protecting the island's birds, and without state or federal laws to back him, Kregel would sail out to Pelican Island with his gun and stand guard. A well-known ornithologist of the day, Frank Chapman, discovered that Pelican Island was the last rookery for brown pelicans on Florida's east coast. Along with fellow bird protection advocate William Dutcher, Chapman met with President Theodore Roosevelt and appealed to his strong conservation ethic. On March 14, 1903, President Roosevelt designated Pelican Island as the nation's first national wildlife refuge. With a monthly salary of $1, Kregel was hired as the first National Wildlife Refuge warden. With his gun, boat, and badge, Paul Kregel stood watch over the island until his retirement from federal service in 1926. When the dredge and fill plan began in the 1960s, a group of local commercial fishermen, citrus growers, and sportsmen banded together to form the Indian River Preservation League. They worked diligently to protect the island that had over a half a century earlier started the U.S. conservation movement.
Being commercial fishermen, obviously, and on the water every day, they saw things and they knew how the environment worked. They knew how things were linked together, and they knew when one of those links was broken, what the potential could be.
The League convinced the state of Florida to stop the sale of these important wetlands, as well as to set aside 422 acres of mangrove islands as part of the refuge. Through their efforts, Pelican Island was preserved. But other areas along the Indian River continued to be developed. With its abundant estuary and access to the ocean, the lagoon regained its reputation as a sportsman's paradise. Paved roads and a new causeway opened the inlet to a new wave of growth. Marinas and condominiums became gathering spots for vacationers and sport fishermen. And the river, once a serene waterway for small commercial fishing boats, began to move at a different pace.
You'd be out there sometimes a week or two in the river and never see another boat. And that was awesome. Now you gotta, it's like being on the freeway, you gotta, check behind you to the side, you get run over, literally. Somebody doing 40, 50 knots.
Sebastian growing up was a typical small town American waterfront fishing village, if you will. That was a fantastic place to grow up. The freedom was enormous, you could come and go, but it was all based around family and work and friends. It was a great place to grow up as a boy.
On Saturday mornings, I had my household chores to do. My mom had chores for me and my sister to do, and then after that, then I could go to the fish house to play. And because that's what we would do, we'd hunt fiddler crabs on the river shore and fish off the dock, laying on the dock, fishing on the pylons for sheephead, mangrove snappers. And then when my dad would come in, I would have to go catch bait with him.
As a little fella, he went fishing with me. He'd get seasick, so sick I thought he was going to die. Of course, I used to get seasick too.
I hated the seasick part, but I loved the fishing, and so I just stayed with it.
But it gave him something to do. He could earn his own money.
Not only were we fishing and catching fish and having fun, but as young boys and teenagers, we were making very good wages.
I would actually ride my bike down to the fish house, and I'd take the boat out and I'd fish. And when I got into high school, I would fish. I would go out and make a first set at night, and I'd have to be back home by 10 o'clock. So I'd go out and I'd fish. I started making money in high school. I made enough money in high school to buy my first truck.
It was all there was to do when we were growing up around here, and kept us all out of trouble, kept some money in our pockets, and kept us honest and kept us fishing. I mean, that's about all we had to do.
It wasn't necessarily the money, although that was, for young folks, it was nice, but it was who we are. It was the fiber and the fabric of what we'd always done and who we were. We were net fishermen, mullet, mackerel, bluefish. It's hard to describe into words, but there's nothing like it.
In November of 1994, a long-standing debate regarding the harvesting of Florida's nearshore finfish came to a head with the passing of Amendment 3 of the Florida Constitution. The amendment, which came to be known as the net ban, was implemented in July of the following year. Citing the overharvesting of nearshore species, environmental groups and sports fishermen lobbied for the banning of gill and trammel nets in Florida waters. The effects to Florida's commercial fishing industry were devastating.
I guess you'd say really a dying art.
When the net ban came down, it was a crippling blow to our family. It's what we had done for almost a century. And realizing at that point in time that Florida had changed from when we first came to Sebastian in the early 1900s.
When the net ban started, was the worst year, I think, of my life. Because I had fishermen that's all they'd ever done was fished. And some of them were 55, 60 years old. And tears would come in their eyes, and their wives would cry. And it was terrible.
It was all I ever wanted to do, and all I wanted to do was retire fishing, if you call it retire, because I've known fishermen being 90 years old and still going. So just like me, I'm 67 now. I figure I had me another 23 years at least, of fishing that I could have gone.
The effect of the net ban on Sebastian was swift and devastating. Many commercial fishermen were forced to work onshore to make ends meet. The once impressive fleet was cut down to a handful of boats. Most of the remaining turned to handline mackerel fishing in the Atlantic.
Once the all-in-all net ban in state waters went in, the fish houses really were in trouble because all they had to depend on was the handline king mackerel fishermen. And now they're sitting on a piece of property that's worth millions of dollars, dealing a few handline king mackerel. And what happened was most of them sold out, and they're fancy marinas and restaurants now.